what we wanted to do is go over this coaching section and specifically the mentoring guidance. You will actually give me your mentoring guidance and I will walk through that with you. This can be done before the 91 days. It can be done during the 91 days. Ideally, you would do it absolutely within the first 2 weeks of the 91 days. So the very first step is that you, again, select a coach or a mentor, somebody that you can go through this with, and they need to be, like the mentor needs to be the one over you. The coach can be a work person. I would say because of the sensitivity of some of these things, you would want to have this one be as close to home. So a spouse or somebody over you, like somebody that can get that holistic approach. Now for this one, I'm not Brandon's mentor, and so we're not necessarily going to dive into all the details of everything. I am going to prompt you. I'm going to try to pry out some of the different things from you in them. And so if at any time, and this is even for the camera, if at any time it's like, Chris shouldn't be knowing this, this is not for Chris, this is for my dad or somebody like over me, like that's okay to say, like, Chris, that's, something else, skip.
Okay.
Hand this over to me. In the video, I said this is one of the most powerful documents in the 91 day. And the reason why this is so powerful is because, just a brief summary, is that we have so many layers on us as people. And so the way that I learned this, of all places, was in real estate. When people were asking for homes, then these real estate agents learned a process of getting people to they called it crystallize, getting people to crystallize, but basically they would even say to get what's really in their heart. So somebody would say, I want a house on the hill with the view of the city lights. And somebody else, I want to make sure we see this, but somebody said, I want a house on the hill with the view of the city lights. And the real estate agent would go to try to find those houses, and the buyer would see all those houses with the view of city lights, and they would find something that doesn't have a view of the city lights. And so there was a coined term that people would say, buyers are liars, and that was because the buyers never knew what it is that they wanted, and they would say, I want a home inside a community, I want a home with a pool, I want a home with whatever, and that buyer didn't end up getting that home, and the real estate agent trying to show them the right homes would never be able to get the right homes. And so these people saw this process in cells in a different area, and then they applied it into real estate. So it is like it's not just for real estate, and you'll learn that it's for pretty much anything when you ask somebody what it is that you're after. So this one specifically is in the 91-day action plan because we want to take action. We want to understand what it is that we need to focus on these next 91 days. What should we prioritize and what should we be involved in? And so going through this process helps break down what's going on in somebody's heart to where we really understand. And this is more of a topic for another time, but this is somewhat of a placeholder. When we talk about the diagram that's inside the frameworks, the new book that's coming out, that diagram, it would be a little bit easier to show this. But my belief is, as you really look at somebody's spirit, then they have all the DNA to be who they're supposed to be. So sometimes their wants might be governed by things that they don't really want. And so they might say, okay, I want this, I want this, I want this, and yet in their spirit's screaming no. It's screaming like, I don't want this, I don't want to go that route. But for whatever reason, there's clogs going on to where they have pinpoint, this is what I want. And so the only way to really help somebody crystallize on these is to talk them through those things that we say we want, those things we want to do, those things that we're going after. And so I will have to go into a little bit more detail about how some of these things work, but I think if we just give this in a simplistic approach, then people can still use it at its simple form and do it the best you know how, and then as time goes on, you can be more effective in learning and understanding that if somebody's saying, I want a house, and I want it with a pool in the yard, and I don't want it to be in any community, so going back to that story, then the real estate agent was working with a buyer that they specifically said, I want a house not in a community, I want a pool in the backyard, and kind of list off a few other things. So this real estate agent spent a ton of time showing them houses with pools, showing them houses outside of communities. They get frustrated. They get at each other's throats. They break off the contract. This buyer goes and finds a house. This real estate agent goes, and this real estate agent actually cared. Like, he really cared. What is it that you want? What is it that you need? And was asking them, what do you want? So then they run off from each other. And then about 3 or 4 months later, this real estate agent finds out that this buyer found a house. And it finds a house inside a community, doesn't have a pool, and pretty much a lot of these things they list it didn't have. And so then the real estate agent's so baffled and like, wait, what? So confused. And so as they progress in their career, then they go to a workshop that they go through this process. And he's like, there's no way it's going to work. There's no way it's going to work. And so then he goes through, and he does this process with his first buyer. And so based on going through this process, then they go and show a house. And when he shows the house, the first house they step into, the buyers are like, this is it. This is the house. And he goes, no way. Like, the buyers don't find them that fast. This is no way. So then he goes and he drives them to this next house and this next house. And each time they keep referencing that first house. But it had this, but it had this, but it has this. And then by the third one, the buyer turns to the guy and says, we just want to go buy that first house. Like, can you stop showing us any more houses? And so he was so like, it shook his belief so strongly that he's like, I've just got to. I got to show this buyer houses because they for sure are going to come back and regret it, not seeing all these other ones. And they're like, no, this is what we want. And so to deep dive into this, it'd be a long process. So to try to keep it simple, then really, really simple is that sometimes we say, okay, we want a kitchen with 2 stoves in it. And then you find out that the buyer wants a kitchen with 2 stoves in it, not because they're after the 2 stoves, but it's because they have attached those 2 stoves as family time, and their kids have already moved on. They want their grandkids to come, and you find out they really just want a space for their grandkids to be able to come, because they're kind of thinking, man, they don't visit us very often, and whatever. And so you actually attach it deep down into that they are after family time. And even if the house had 2 stoves and it can't give them that family time, it doesn't have the space for it, and if it doesn't have the space for that family time, then they're going to regret that purchase. They're not going to be able to do it. And even though they specifically, dead in the eye, say, I want a house with 2 stoves in it. Yeah. That's like my biggest on the list. And the real estate agent, okay, I'll go find you a house with 2 homes. But then they find one that has two stoves, and then they go find the ones with 2 stoves, and it's like, it can't house what they're after. So to try to pull all that together, now I want to make sure I have this down. Now we go into saying there's different needs. And again, I think that there's probably with Bright Minds, probably with a lot of different programs talk about the needs. And I don't know, you can try to get caught up in, it's this one and people after this one and this is what makes humans tick and there's this diagram and this diagram. And it's like, whatever works. And so if this doesn't work for somebody to go through, to really find, like if I'm a mentor and this isn't working to try to get what's going on and this other thing does, then it's like use that other thing. The goal is to try to get to somebody's heart and to understand what those things are really after. And this was just the ones that they provided. The only thing that I provided on here is this box, which is Afterlife Glory. And these ones are a little bit more of I do believe that they're a lot deeper, but on the surface level, it seems like they're more for consumerism, where it's like, what do you want in purchasing a home? And so that's kind of where it might, when people first see this, it might be a little bit confusing, and that's okay. But the goal is to the best of your ability, if you're a mentor and you're going through this process with somebody, to the best of your ability, fill these things out, and the point is to try to get them to crystallize. And what do we mean by crystallize? And what we mean by crystallize is that we know the real reason why they're after a specific thing. We know what that would really do for them. And it's like like we said in the video, if someone's going to work out, you kind of dig deep. So we're going to attempt to do some of those with Brandon here. And our hope is that we get a little bit more clarity on what that 91 day should be, what the next things that you should be focusing on should be, and essentially a holistic approach to that 91 day where it's not just, oh, I want a house with a pool or I want to be on time. It's like, I know this, you don't have to answer this right now until we get into it, but it's like, if you need to set something at work, like why?
Mm-hmm.
What will that do for you? And so we're gonna talk about some of these things to where even like holistically, like if you need to say, Chris, stop this, I can't talk to you about this, you're not my dad, then that's okay. Like it's absolutely fine. Like please, like you should have wisdom when talking to people about things. Like it's okay to keep it to yourself.
Trying to think of a song that can have some clean roads.
but with that, don't let that pressurize you too much. Like I'm going to prod to the point where you're gonna hit everything.
Yeah.
And if there's stuff that you're like, you know what, I'm gonna say this, but Chris, you gotta cut it out, then for sure, like we'll let you review the whole thing before anything goes out.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Yeah, we'll give it all to you. So the very first goal is to make sure you're in a scenario, like if I'm talking to you, you're not going to hold back to the best of your ability. Like if there's obviously if there's stuff you need to hold back, then hold it back. But just you wanted to the very best of your ability, like, this is what I'm trying to get at. If anything, if you need to, then pause and say it in your head, and you clarify that in your head, but don't say anything to me. Does that make sense? So if you say like, okay, I'm going to need about 5 minutes, or I need 2 minutes, or I need a minute to think about this, then just take that time and zone into that. And we can cut out that time so people aren't watching Brandon zone in all day. But to actually zone in on it, then you want to, take that time, so your 91 days.
Especially if something you don't know about, then you're going to have to, I'm going to have to.
Yeah, and so with that being said.
Something undiscovered.
With that being said, so here's what's here. I think to make this the easiest, I am going to start writing some things down. If at any point you need to write stuff down on your phone, then go ahead. So have your phone ready. And on the video, I also said that you should be recording it. So that as we go through and talk about things, I don't want you to worry about, crap, I need to write that down, or I'm going to forget about that. Like we're going to video record it, but you want to audio record it. So everybody, when you go through this process with a mentor, you want to audio record it, because you don't want to be worrying about, I got to write this down, I'm going to forget it. Like make it as easy for your brain to be able to say, this is what I'm going to be focusing on, and continue that route. All right, so you ready?
Yes.
You ready for it? So I have the thing written down, just the pressure of the cameras, it's a little bit harder, so I just need a minute to make sure I'm getting the right wording down. And I feel like I got it, so I guess for the record, it's describe for me what your next 91 days looks like, but I want to make sure I get the exact wording, because it is important mentally to get that right wording down for people around you. So let's go. So I put, describe for me what you want your next 91 days to look like. So I would say, just as far as mentors go, if somebody doesn't have a good judgment as far as what they want, you for sure still want to ask them what the next 91 days are going to be about. But you don't have to have that want. Like you can go back and forth. But essentially, the words, and now I'm going to do that for you, is to describe for me what your next 91 days look like.
Okay, so for the next 91 days, we're thinking I want to make progress in like specifics, or like you want specifics, or just...
So what do you want to make progress in?
So I want to make progress in as many areas of my life as I can, specifically my family, work, and education.
So inside the work part of it, I'm going to write some things down. I'm just going to write it up here. I might move this to another place. But so so for your family, then I think that's good. For your work, what specifically, what does progress look like at work?
Progress looks like a structure that is being followed. Progress looks like that I have reports that I'm looking at, that I see the numbers going up. I see the numbers going up on reports our KPIs, essentially. And that's gonna happen, I feel like, through structure.
Okay. So what does the structure bring to that? Like, what does that structure bring?
Yeah, so the structure, I guess, gives a way to do it. Gives a way for the KPIs to happen. So it gives a way for people to do it.
So what you're saying is people aren't doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
People are not doing it.
And so, if like why? I know this might be like sound like a kind of a dumb question, but like why not let people kind of just go in the dark and not have the structure?
Because the business isn't successful. I get in trouble. Everyone gets in trouble. We're not profitable.
Yeah. Okay, so just not pausing, but just to go. So essentially in these boxes, I'm trying to see what he's after in that area. So when I'm talking about work progress, when he's talking about structure, I'm kind of putting it at a convenience level. You know, that work progress, maybe it's more of a convenience. But as I dig deeper, you say, okay, it's more of an economy, a business success. And so, yes, maybe it's more convenient, but more critically, it's like making a profit, making an income, making sure that what you're doing, like you're producing more than you consume, essentially.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And so business success is producing more,
Exactly.
more than consume. And so what's in your work of being profitable, so in all profits, then you have some sort of service that you're given. Can you describe a little bit holistically of what that service does for people?
Like as like what it does for them.
Yeah, like what is that? So
It changes it enables them. It basically helps them reach their highest potential. So we work with. Are you talking about like with the kids and stuff?
yeah, so your clients.
Yeah. So we work for patients who have all kinds of problems, ADHD, anxiety, all that. We help them get rid of that. We help them feel better, reach their fullest potential, basically.
Mm-hmm. And so
Get them better, essentially.
okay. Yeah, so even in that, so I may say, okay, the part of the economy, for sure, I mean, there's business success, producing more you consume, but there is a sense of, I guess, self-actualization. Like you guys actually love, or I would say
Care for them.
Care
About their results.
So self-actualization, part of what helps you is them being helped. So client
Yeah, patient quality care
progress.
is what quality of care that they get. Is
Mhm.
the number. In fact, I would argue that that's more important than. In fact, the reason I want to do the structure is because I know the quality of care is going to go up.
Okay.
I'd almost say that's more important than the profit, but I know there has to be profit in order to do that to lots of people.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So it's like the priority. So now I say, okay, it was kind of a convenience thing. No, it's more of an economy thing. He wants to make a profit. No, you know what? It's actually more of a self-actualization to where if I don't have the funds to fuel that progress, like client progress, like sometimes you have to do research, sometimes you have to do studies, sometimes you have to create processes, and ultimately you're getting some sort of self-actualization, like it's actually fulfilling. It's something that, I mean, you could, if you would, you do it without pay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yep. 100%.
Yeah. So now you go like, okay, like on this, hopefully we're catching this, but essentially we're going through this, and I jumped from, okay, maybe it's more convenience, more making money, or economy, maybe value of money, but now we say client progress. So again, these right here, you need a lot more explanation, and so I'm purposely keeping it more generic so that you can just say, you know what, I think it's in this box, I think it's this box. I think people don't get too caught up in these. I think if we get caught up in the specifics, we'd be here a long time.
Yeah.
And so this first rendition, for sure, we're keeping it very vague on purpose to make sure that it's like, if you go find a coach or somebody that's like, okay, can you take me through this? Then you can actually, you know what, I'm just going to do my best on filling it out, and hopefully your 91 days is good. If that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
so let's keep going. So going to that, I want to tie these a little bit more since we're moving into that work area. So each time, so we talk about the work progress, and so creating a process. So if you don't have a process down, you can't make a profit, you lose money, you don't help the client as well as you could have. Basically, overall, everything deteriorates. So the focal point of this 91 days is to create a structure that your clients actually progress, and you guys are making an income to where that money that they're paying, any of that money going in there, is worth every dime for them, and they're progressing to it to where if you know, the problem, so a client comes in and the problem isn't getting solved, what you're saying is that if we can fix this process portion, that solving can actually happen more often, can happen faster, can happen as it needs to, versus they're coming in and then sometimes you guys might be working through maybe some sort of simple problem, simple process. And I'm not saying like I think that this isn't to try to say like American Wellness is bad in their process. I actually have one of my kids in there and it's been doing great. Or yeah, she's been doing really good. So it's not like the quality us talking about the quality, it's more that behind the scenes, that behind the scenes stuff to where it's like a client should have this, or something simple as who's going to be watching the front desk, or what does that person at the front desk do. And it's like the quality and the procedures might be there to be able to be life-changing, but then if you can't get them through the door in a professional way, it's like, what's going on? Like, what are we doing?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's the process. It's the structure.
So, again, I do want to keep this simple, and I don't want to go for too long, but again, I would go even more in detail of, okay, so for that client experience, in what way do you improve that client experience?
How would it be improved?
Yeah, how would, so this next 91 days, what would you do to improve that experience?
We would assign their plan. Ideally, their plan of care would be very specialized to that person, to them. So they're not going to get some generic treatment that we give to everyone, because everyone's needs are a little bit different, and it would address that.
So then what's preventing you from having that right now?
Right now, I feel like there's not a structure to say, there's not someone to do it, to say, okay, this is how your plan looks, this is how your plan is going to look based on these symptoms.
I see.
Based on these symptoms, this is how it should look. There's no one to say that, to do that, to make that happen.
I see.
And
so
then I'm caught up busy over here. This person's caught up busy doing this stuff, and there's not someone. But I know if we structure it, and this person does this, I do this. This is how it is structured. Then their plan of care is going to be very individualized. They're going to get the best treatment, and everything's going to flow smooth. And then we have
So then when you go to a boots on the ground, I guess you would say, level. What would someone have to do to create that plan?
They need to set aside the time and sit down and write it. Well, they would have to have the research background, or else do the research themselves. Say, this is what you would do with this symptom. This is the treatment. And they would look at the current plan of care, and they would address these are things that need to change on that plan of care, and basically just make that change happen. The changes being, there needs to be another column here called specialized treatment or whatever.
I see.
And the techs do that, something like that.
So then how would one communicate with another? So you have someone who's the specialist. Like, how does that physically get from here to there?
So like, how do they know to do that treatment? How do they make that happen, or how do they know to do that? Like,
so is the person if I'm saying, okay, this is specialized treatment, this is what they should do, who is, like, if I'm assigning that, like, this is their plan, am I executing that plan?
No, it's going to be another technician doing it. They lift up the iPad, and it pops up on the iPad, and the iPad is telling them what their treatment is.
I see.
And then they would see that.
So as far as the infrastructure, is that iPad already there,
It is there. The iPad is there.
And is the software on there already there?
The software is on there. They have a plan of care on there.
So there is already in place.
There is a treatment plan already.
Treatment plan.
It is not individualized.
I see. And so then all you're saying is that you just need that process to get this input and this input and this input to then show up on the iPad.
Yeah, and it's a little bit more complicated because there's someone who has to go into the software and add that into, because it's a whole another software. It's not like an Excel or a Word or anything. They have to go in and design it and make it a part of their plan of care that pops up
Mm-hmm.
as they're scrolling down the medical software.
I see.
And
so what would you say, like, is that a bottleneck that needs to be different, or is it something that you would say, or is it like there's somebody dedicated to do that every single time, or what?
it is possible to change it. There's a couple people who know how, but not everyone knows how to do it.
Mm-hmm. So then are the people who know how to do it blocked out to do it, or they have other tasks?
So I know how to do it.
Okay.
I know how.
I see what you're saying. So then going back to that time thing of saying,
Yeah.
like, you can do it, but then there's this person and this person that you're taking care of.
Yeah, and then I'm in charge of managing these other things that are a higher priority.
I see.
Right now and then.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same thing. Just running a business, I understand. So as you go through this and you look at that 91 days, if you were today, like, okay, next 91 days, they're going to start next week. So July 2nd is the next 91 days, and it starts on a Sunday. The reason why, I guess we can put it here, the reason why it starts on a Sunday is to get that in to you, to say my Sunday should be my review or my prep for the week. Like, I cannot stand to go the week without sitting down with my family and saying, what do we have to worry about, what might come up, what might trip us up, what things are scheduled, what things do we have going on. And one thing that's super helpful about that is that you kind of see, okay, like, they know what I go through. It's not just some obscure, far off, like if we're sitting down on Sunday and it's like, man, we need to get the studio here, and then through the week it gets delayed. Yeah. It's like they kind of understand that a little bit more versus kind of in hindsight, how come you're late and what's this going on here? It's like they can be more of that support of oh, this is what's going on, and this is what you were after, and you were about this excited about these things going in place, and they didn't happen. And so it's a little bit more of, okay, grounding in the week. So the reason why the 91 days start on the Sunday is so that you can start off that in that way. And it's like there's not going to be, I mean, sometimes there's events and parties and whatnot, but it's not really going to be most people, Sunday night aren't having a whole lot of things going on.
Yeah.
So great time to do that. Sometimes we had done it on a Saturday because we knew the Sunday was going to be crazy. So we took the time on a Saturday to go through and review it. But most often it really is on a Sunday. Anyway, so going more into this and into detail, like I said, I will keeping it, I feel a little bit, I would say, chained, not being able to go into the holistically into different things. I mean, we're kind of diving into this work area because I don't want it to be too long. But if the point should be across that as I go into it, and you in talking about work things before, maybe someone hears, man, I'm trying to make an income or trying to make a profit, and it's like, wow, is that all he cares about? Does he care about the clients? And it's like, well, if I do improve that care and I help those clients, like, I want to be able to have a transaction that every cent, like, they would be like, man, can I pay you more? Have it so good that they're just like, man, that is worth going through. That is worth the time. That is worth the money. That's worth the effort, and the results show for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so even as we look at it, that self-actualization, you having that client progress is the ultimate goal, is the end goal. And so diving deep into, okay, what should these checklists look like? What should these financials look like? What should these goals look like? Ultimately, if we're not seeing that progress in the client, if that isn't resulting in a better care, the client care, then none of that even matters.
Yeah. Yep. And that's kind of how I look at it. We got these if we could bring on some fancy toys, some fancy equipment, and client care goes down, then why are we doing that?
Yeah.
And that's just what matters. Like you said, that's the goal.
Yeah. So then talking about this sheet right here, maybe they start off talking about some of this income, and you really have to dive deep. Okay, what is that income going to do, and what is that income going to be? So in a work setting, for sure, like, I think that there would be other categories or even approaches, because this one, is a really good one and a very powerful one, but it's more focused on why is somebody doing something, or why are you saying that you want this. And if you want to have an actual, I guess you would say step by step, like this is what I'm going to work, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do. You have the 9-in-1 day, and we have some other frameworks for some of those things, but knowing why you're doing something is really critical. And it does sound like you guys have talked about it over at American Wellness, and that's essentially where you're focusing on. And so now, as you say, is my job to focus on the checklists and convincing people to use checklists, or is my job convincing them to care just as much as I do and care about the results of those checklists? Because yes, you are doing the checklist, and that's the key piece of it. But if it's at the forefront, we got to get checklists in place. We got checklists in place. If we forefront it that way, there might be some, misunderstanding of what should be there. But if it's like, our clients can be this much better, and we can see this type of progress, and we can see whatever, and the only way we do this is by getting the checklist in place. The only way we do this is by somebody caring about this section,
Yeah.
And so then you make it more about that versus just about a boss trying to make an employee do something.
Yeah.
Because then that's the story. The story isn't the client getting a better care. The story is a boss is trying to get a client to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so for sure, there needs to be you got to get this checklist done. We got to work through these things. I'm not saying not to do that, but at the very forefront of that presentation and in your heart, you actually have to feel that if this isn't together, it hurts me because my client is hurt.
Yeah, that's actually what I tell my employees. I say it pains my heart. Do you know why? Because our patient has a pain in their heart, pains my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to do this so that we can do it. Pick it up. You have to do it the day of. It pains my heart when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because I have noticed when we get a new hire, and I'll tell them I'll show them, I'll train them. This is what we're doing. This is the results that we get. They're kind of whatever, dilly dally, whatever, doing all this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I see them working with a patient, and they're not into it or engaged, and they're some of them are more focused on the checklist. I'm doing my checklist.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, you are doing it, but I bring up a video. Look, watch this video, and they watch a video of a client who was who jumped up to here, and the progress, and it's got the music and it's emotional. And It's an awesome video, and they're like, whoa. And I says, you can do this. This is what we're after. You can get this. And he's like, this is what you're after. And after that, I see that they're more engaged with the kid because they're looking at the kid like, you're going to get to this point.
Yeah.
So
they care about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now we're talking, before in the other video, we were talking about the kind of the action plan and the frameworks, and you have somewhat of that. I want to be careful in saying it, but the husband and the wife, but essentially you have the mechanics and the heart. And so even as you go and you say, well, even if the heart is there, if the mechanics aren't in place, it all falls apart. So that's why it's when you go to the 91 day and we kind of tie these into, you're clear on that heart, and maybe we got to get a little bit more clear on the mechanics, of that mechanics, because the clients, or not the clients, the employees care.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the employees, I can help their heart care, but then they're bad at managing their time.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, but kind of looking at from those two.
That's what you determine.
Yeah, so then you kind of decide, okay, is their heart not into it? Is their priorities out of whack, or whatever's going on? And so in some cases, even as we talk about this and we talk about work, and I'm not saying, so it says afterlife glory right here, and afterlife glory is essentially saying, if someone's saying, I'm doing this for Heavenly Father. Now, majority of everybody would, if they were to kind of talk about things, they would say, okay, this is for Heavenly Father. Now, if you, and I don't know if this will be a touchy topic, but if you go and you say, well, this is for Heavenly Father, but I can't get my checklist down, I can't get the mechanics down, then I need to make sure that I'm clear that in order to help Heavenly Father, I've got to understand those sections here. It's not just, it needs to be about those things. But if it's not thought about thoroughly down to the details, then it's almost like, what help are you doing if you can't manage or these things are mismanaged? So going back to that 91 day, it's like, yes, you want to make sure that you're focusing on making the profit or making sure that those clients are progressing, but that 91 day helps you get those mechanics down. So sometimes you got to swing between those. Is it heart that's not in there? Is there perspective shifts that need to happen? Or maybe the road just isn't built to let that happen. And then sometimes it's a combination of the two. Sometimes one person they're all fine with building the road, but they don't have their heart in it. And somebody else is like, their heart, like, essentially they need a, so you have someone that's building the road and their heart's not into it, and somebody else whose heart's into it and they're not building the road. And so you have that back and forth, and that's why it works so well as you're in a company, because then you can see some of those strengths and weaknesses and say, okay, you shine really well with this end, and you shine really well with this end, and you kind of move things around. But anyway, so really this process would take about an hour. I would kind of go through those different things. But one thing I would say, if I was mentoring you, then I would say, or coaching you, then I would say that this is more than a 91 day. Like, the things that you're going to be working on, you're probably going to have to work on specific sections of that 91 day. Specific sections. So it's like, you can lay it out to say, you know what, I'm going to set this in place. Like, all areas of my life are going to set in place. But to set the work in place, that might take more than 3 months.
Right.
And so going on to, we were talking about the VGM, and that's another topic for another time. But essentially, you need to have those long-term ways of managing things. And maybe that is a digital thing. Maybe that thing is a digital, okay, I've got to manage that for the long term. And for sure, I'll send you the document for a VGM. But when you start to realize that, then you can start to say, okay, now that my 91 day, get that VGM done. Then partway through that 91 day, I'm going to complete this section, this milestone, and this milestone.
Like building the VGM. Yeah.
And so then you could even say, you know what, that 91 day, yes, it's to set work in place, but it's not really. What it really is to get clear about what that looks like and what that means, so that as those 91 days close up and we go to the next 91 days, we actually have a game plan that carries on throughout those different 91 days. Yeah. So now we can go to both areas. We go to boots on the ground. We got to get that VGM together, and then the higher view of everything to say, we need to section these out, that these 91 days, there's these sections, because yes, I can maybe set things in order in the next 91 days, but more realistically, it's this section and this section. Longer, yeah. And maybe, I don't know if the iPad thing, maybe that's something to say, okay, this is something I can get done with the next 91 days. It's part of a bigger plan. It's part of a bigger goal.
Yeah.
So then what you don't want to have happen is, as you go through this and you say, man, I'm going to set the whole thing in place in the next 91 days, and then you come back and like, I didn't accomplish anything. And it's like, no, you did accomplish stuff. You just didn't realize how much it was going to take. And this whole section that you thought was going to take like a week, it's taken 4 months.
So I don't want to shoot for that goal in those small 91 days.
So you want to, if you're not clear about it, then your shoot for your goal is to get clear about it.
Okay.
Is to know how long. If you don't know how long that's going to take, like if you can't tell me, oh, it's going to take us, we're going to be able to work on it this week and then this week. Like if you can't tell me what you're going to work on each week,
that's what it needs to be.
Then your 91 days should be clarifying what that takes.
Okay.
Because it doesn't hurt to say, okay, the first 91 days, I'm going to just clarify
what needs to happen,
what's going on and what's happening and what steps are in place, because then it's like, oh man, I'm going to conquer the world in the next 91 days. It's like, well, you've got to be clear of what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And so be realistic about it and say, okay, I've got to break these things down.
When you're doing a 91 day, you have to have somewhat of clarity on how long it's going to take. Yeah. If you're not clear, then that's what it should be spent doing.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Because they're like, well, I have a digital system tracking my long-term stuff. Perfect. Get what you need to on your 91 day. Like clarify what you need to on the 91 day, and make so that your primary boots on the ground actions contribute to the holistic thing, and your 91 day isn't used for a generic over, I'm gonna have the best relationship in the world in the next 91 days. It's like,
Yeah, well, that's good to know, because
okay.
I was kind of thinking, like, with the business thing, well, there's 91 days. I want this to be done. I want this to be structured. I
Yeah.
don't know how long it's going to be, how
Mhm.
long it's actually going to take, but maybe I can do it in this 91 days.
Yeah.
So that's
And
what you don't want to do. You want to
make sure you're
know.
clear. So if you can, so for example, we did it so we have to get the studio, and we had deadlines we had to do it within the 30 days. I knew it was going to be in the 91 days.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, you're like, well, I want to accomplish this next 90 days. There might be some obscure things,
Mm-hmm.
but if it's something as big as that, like doing an overhaul restructure, then your 91 days should be clarifying, because your restructuring is going to happen, over the next 6-12 months.
Mm-hmm.
So now your 91 day, you know what to focus on. Okay, what books do you need to read? Maybe some books on restructuring. Maybe the media to watch is more on some of those restructions, or basically a holistic vision that you can say. And again, I know it might not make as much sense. We just barely got off of talking about a VGM, and that's going to be basically, a VGM can be a holistic approach, a UBM, a referenced approach to accomplishing something. But you got to have a VGM that is that long term, and to then clarify if that, like, okay, we're going to restructure a company. To clarify what that's going to take, that's going to take you about a month to clarify those things. And when I say clarify, it's not just like, oh, we need a checklist for this. Oh, we need this. It's like, how long is it going to take you? And what tools do you need to actually get that in place? What things do you need to purchase? Who do you need to talk to? Who should you talk to? Who shouldn't you talk to? What support do you need to get to? What program should you be on? What training things should you do? Like you have all these answers that it's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do all that. When? How? At what point?
That's what that's for.
So then, yeah, that's what a VGM is for. And then a 91 day says, okay, I'm boots on the ground. I can do this today. Okay, what can you do today? Well, put 91 day. Chris needs to send me that file.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing to do that. Well, so in some cases, you will be, some of those things. So maybe in 91 day, get employees on a mentoring program. Get whatever that is. Like, you can go down in that 91 day and be specific if you can already nail it down. So if you can nail it down to say, okay, how long would it take for you to get those employees on the mentoring thing? You're like, well, Chris, you just email that to me. Maybe that takes 2-3 days, whatever time it takes. Just email that to me. After you email that to me, then I'm going to print them out. I'm going to talk to whoever I need to talk to, and then I'm going to implement it. Okay, you can walk through that with me. Now I say, okay, how do you make a client have a better experience overall in their progress? And that's going to be a big thing that you're like, I've got to clarify this section. Maybe I understand this section. So, for example, that OKR list, I guess there might be stuff in there, but the OKR list, you might say, I know we need to improve. Like, we're talking about the iPad thing of implementing those things. Maybe there's specifics you already know. We can improve this. So the nice thing about the 91 day is that you can do both, meaning you can say, I got to clarify this, but I also know what I already have to do. So in the next 91 days, I know I can do this, I know I can do this, I know this. So then the vision for the next 91 days is you can try to say, we're going to get all these things in place for improving the client progress. But if you don't nail down what that looks like and what that means, you got to have a section in your 91 day that says, I'm going to block out time to do that. So now we look at the recommended schedule, and now I say, you know what? On top of saying for my next 91 days, I need to improve user experience in this way. We need to make sure someone's at the front desk, and maybe I have a sporadic pieces of what that means and looks like at work. And so I start to nail those things down of what those things look like. And then I say, you know what? This thing is going to be long enough that I'm going to go to my recommended schedule, and I'm going to say, I'm going to spend 2 hours a day clarifying that vision, 1 hour a day clarifying that vision, or 4 hours on Thursday clarifying that vision. So now for those next 91 days, you actually have to set aside time to think about those things. Because sometimes what we say, oh, we're going to progress all these things, but we don't account for the research and the development and the planning and the logistics that come down to it.
Yeah.
So what that 91 day now looks like is, okay, what day of the week or how many, so let's just ask the question, how many hours do you think you need to do a week to
plan it?
plan it?
Probably a lot.
But let's just assume, let's just try to nail something down. How many do you think would be sufficient a week?
At least an hour a day.
An hour a day, and what time of the day would you do it?
Probably mornings would be.
Mornings
Most
would be the
open.
easiest for you?
Yeah.
Like, what time do you think?
It was early morning, so I'd wake up. I'd do somewhat of a planning for
Mhm.
the days. I'd probably cut that and do that in the morning.
Okay.
So plan it in, or just replace the day planning with let's plan this for this.
Planning the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that if you did replace that day planning, that it would make your days more crazy?
Probably.
So do you think that it would be good to say either one, you wake up a little earlier, or you shorten both? So rather than an hour, you say half hour planning the full day.
Yeah.
Wait, let me read this. Day plan, or so half hour you do day planning,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other half hour you do holistic planning. Or you say, you know what, I just need to make sure I have a full run through, so I don't get thrown off. I'm going to do Tuesdays and Thursdays 2 hours in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday I'm going to have day planning so I can catch whatever I don't catch in my Tuesday and Thursday because I'm moving out of that.
It might actually be easier now that I'm thinking about it to do it after work. Just stay an extra hour so I don't deal with traffic too.
Okay.
Just do it.
Yeah, so do it instead of sitting in traffic.
Yeah.
Okay. So just, I'm hoping this is helpful.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking I might actually do that.
No, that's good. That's exactly the thing.
Might
It
actually
is.
wait because I'm just thinking now, I'm sitting there after work and I'm like waiting 20, 30 minutes to get home just because of traffic.
In
when it's
traffic,
a 5-minute
yeah.
drive, 10-minute drive. So I'm thinking if I just wait an extra hour, do the planning,
Mm,
go home, quick drive,
yeah.
win-win.
Yeah. I know that's perfect. We understand we want to have more of a convenient way to help clients progress, and that's our ultimate goal. And we start to go through the actual steps of what that actually takes. And so now, even as we talk about 91 day, we're going beyond a 91 day, and we're looking at, you know what, the client progress and their health is, I'm playing the long game. Like, we're going to be helping them for a long time, and we're going to improve their health every day. So now we are setting the foundation in this 91 day to say, okay, this is the time I'm actually going to dedicate to seeing that holistic vision and clarifying those things. And I'm going to put in the 91 day, whatever I already know. Like, I already know maybe I have this, kind of like that, to put a mentoring thing in place.
Mm-hmm.
I just need this document and this thing. You know what it takes to get there. So put it in your 91 day. But now you say, I also have to account for planning and scheduling and planning for the holistic view. And that's going to take a whole bunch of my time. So now, rather than Brandon sitting in traffic, rather than kind of like, oh my word, this is kind of silly, and why do the construction sites just keep growing? It's like, man, can American Wellness help the health of our streets? But this, it's like a virus. But it helps. I mean, it helps for the long term, so it's not too bad. But, and I'm joking myself, but holistically, you look at it and say, you know what, my time could be better spent somewhere else. You don't have to sit in traffic. You're helping American Wellness. Now that one shift for this next 91 days can make a huge difference. That one shift can make a huge difference over, the rest of the year. Just that one shift. Now maybe you're like, you know what, maybe there's some stuff, maybe because you're so finally getting through it, you're finally understanding, you're finally clarifying it, then you're staying way too late sometimes. So then you're like, you know what, you tell you have a wife at home and you say, you know what, my Tuesdays, I'm going to get home late because I'm going to be working on that. And maybe you try it to group it into one section. So now the recommended schedule, going back to the recommended schedule, you want to have your recommended schedule in pencil so that you can go through and erase some of those things, because maybe you start going through that 91 day and you say, man, that's working. Maybe it's working perfect, and it changes, and the whole world is better because of Brandon decided not to sit in traffic. Maybe that happens. I mean, I'd love for it to happen. But also maybe things in life comes up to where you say, you know what, I'm going, like this month I'm going to do that. This month I'm going to go through and do that. Or maybe it's critical enough, so of people watching, maybe it's something that you're like, I don't have the time to block it here, here, and here, and I need to work late. I need to work overtime. I need to work like basically on my own personal time, like not necessarily checked in, but I'm just working. But then you don't want to neglect everything going on in the rest of your life. Pick a day and pick a time to say, this is a 4-hour stretch every single week. This is my 4 hours. My 4 hours, I'm going to crank that out, because rather than spreading it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday 1 hour, I now have this late one. I'm just going to have that late game here on Monday. Maybe someone's like, you know what, rather than going to softball, I'm going to do this. Or maybe that softball is their release. Like they have to have that softball in there as long as they're not getting bloodied up. But they have to have that softball to be able to, okay, sustain the week. And so some person, that's replacing softball might be that game changer for the rest of their progress.
Yeah.
But for some people, that softball is essentially what's keeping the other things intact. And so as we go through this process of this coaching, we kind of can clarify what that looks like. Now, the beauty of this 91 day, maybe we go in deep enough to say, you know what, we're going to take the next. So we go to At a Glance, and we go to, I guess mine's already, okay, I'll just let people look at there. So go to At a Glance. In At a Glance, there's the week by week, like you have boxes in the weeks. In those boxes, maybe you clarify, you know what, this 1 month for July, that's when I'm going to spend extra overtime doing this plan. And then I'm going to get that through and cranked out. So the rest of the 91 days, I'm just executing on that plan. Maybe. So then you say, you know, by the end of July, I should have that plan clarified. By August, I'm executing on that plan, and I can have a little bit more clarification on what should be week by week and day by day and whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
And so for sure, if that works for you, like if that 1 hour, like you have the routines, you have things down, and that 1 hour is the deciding factor that changes it all, keep it 1 hour. And then you come back through. If you're meeting with the coach once a week, you guys talk about it. You know what? This really isn't working. Okay, what will work? You know, so that whole process and approach of that system of achievement is to say, yes, we're planning this. Yes, I've written down. Yes, I'm committing to this. But if some bomb comes in and throws everything off, I can still move and decide. So for sure, really big point, do what you know. Write out what you know. If you don't know, if you can't tell me, Brandon, how much you're going to have to do and what that looks like and what that takes like laid out, then it's like...
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
So now your 91 day, for at least for the first part, is
out.
clarification. You got to clarify what that looks like. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it is realistic for you to reach that goal by the end of 91 days. So let's say the first 2 weeks, that's enough to set your plan in motion, to clarify what the plan is. And then after those 2 weeks, you're like, man, I can do a little bit more with my 91 day. I can clarify, I can move forward. Or, hopefully this doesn't happen, that you then look at it and like, man, I need 2 months to plan this out, or 3 months to do it, or I have this fire and this fire, and you got to, kind of, it takes the whole 91 days to get that plan out.
Yeah.
So now my recommendation to Brandon would be to start off by going through that 91 day, writing out those things that need to be progressed, those things that you already know that you can do. Start putting out, like in the At a Glance section, with that week by week, start to say, okay, this is when this should happen, this is when this should happen. And then you re-look at things throughout the 91 days. You re-ground yourself every Sunday. And through those things and through that plan, you start to say, okay, this is making more sense. So yeah, like you were asking before, can you come back and fill some of those things out? If you wanted to, write on your plan. You know, at this point, I should have this part filled out, or whatever that is. So like I was telling you before, like I used my own makeshift 91-day action plan to build the 91-day action plan.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, this is what needs to be done. This is what needs done at a 91-day level or at a day-by-day level.
So how long I guess I don't even know how long the VGM, or I don't know if this is
No, you're
different. I don't know how long the VGM is going to take.
right. So
to
then, when do you need to find out by?
But I don't.
You
I need
so
to find out as quick as I can.
right. So let's just give you a goal by the end of next week, like a week from now. You should know how long the VGM will take.
Or should it?
You know, like,
Yeah.
or the whole thing should take, or whatever that is. Like, clarify that those are the markers that you should be putting like emphasis on,
Mm-hmm.
to then say, okay, this week, I don't know what the rest of this looks like, but this 91 days needs to start off with me emailing Christopher until he gives me that form.
And then I get the form, and then I make the VGM.
So then, you know, by week 2, you should have that VGM at least, and it's okay to say, you know what, my goal is to have it done next
Okay.
week. So first week, obtain the VGM, understand the VGM, and then second week is to get it done. And if things, you know, are faster or slower than that, then that's fine. But
Mm-hmm.
you should have that idea of, okay, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do, versus, you know, starting off with a general holistic,
Yeah.
I want to improve everything. Okay, cool. Let's talk about what that means. Let's dig into what that looks like and actually ask the question. So now, if I wasn't, you know, sidetracking on audience, then what I would have done throughout the whole thing is actually nail down. So that was just a work
Mm-hmm.
thread that we start to pull and to understand and to unbury and to clarify what that is. So now we go into all the other areas that you want to improve. So now you might be like, man, I need a VGM for my house. I need a VGM for this. I need a process for this. Whatever that is. So then, even in taking that approach, you start to say, okay, are there other people who have done these things? Are there UBM packets that are in place? And talking about managing employees, like what resources are already there and made. So now when we talk about 91 day and also a VGM, you say a 91 day, we're going to use a 91 day to build a VGM and a VGM to plug into my 91 day. And so now you kind of have those two working hand in hand to get to what you need to. And if there's a lot of clarifying,
Mm-hmm.
then do a lot of clarifying. And the reason why my personal I think it's like a beautiful process. The reason why I like it so much is because I can do both. I can holistically say by the 91 days, this is what I should be, this is what I should look at. And then on a day-by-day basis, I can say by the end of the day, Chris needs to send me that email.
Yeah. Huh. I'm just thinking we can do this for like family and stuff too.
Yeah, so
Get everything set up.
if I'm an official mentor,
Mm-hmm.
I would do a full broad scope of all areas. Now, in categories, there's so many pieces to this, I just don't want to include and overwhelm, but in categories, if I go to my reviews and reflections, this section, the categories of life, and I actually just barely was putting together a video with this, and it's kind of dark to see on the camera, but it's whatever, it's page 123. The categories, I have these broken down in different categories. And these categories are probably, I don't know I haven't seen any categories as thought out as these ones. So you have relationships, your character, your well-being, your contribution, your lifestyle, and your world citizenship. And then within there, your well-being, you have spiritual health, emotional health, mental health, and physical health. All those are wrapped up and categorized in well-being. It's like if you're doing a fast, could be spiritual, could be mental, could be physical, could be emotional. That's going to hit all those things, so now you don't get too caught up in like, where does this goal supposed to go? But this is beside the point right now because we haven't even introduced any of this stuff. But the point being is that you should have, we just talked about your contribution. So we're kind of nailing down your contribution. Now, if you needed to, this 91 days, if the contribution is big enough to be like, you know what, that's the biggest focal point in my life that's eating up most of my time and whatever, maybe it's like, you know what, I got to nail down this contribution area or this career area to free up to see, you know, take a look at those other areas. Does that make sense? So maybe in some cases you're going to focus on the this contribution the first month, and then the next month you're going to start to look at some of those other relationships so relationship stuff or well-being or character or any of the other types of things that you're like, you know what, this is an area of focus that I want to look into, but it's going to be a second month or the third month or whatever.
So okay. So is it like, I guess that I'll watch your video. I'll watch the video on it first.
Okay, no, that's good. So ultimately, I think that was a good enough step into it. I think if we talk any longer, I mean, we can be here for hours really to talk about the different areas. But what you want to do, the goal for that mentee, the coaching and the mentor guidance is to really talk to somebody or talk to you about clarifying what that looks like, that you don't run into this 91 days with a generic view of what you want to get done. We start to actually make those things a reality. We start taking them seriously. We start caring about, okay, what does that look like versus what we usually do is generalize. Oh, I want to have this. I want to do this. I want to, this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
So now when you start to actually clarify it down to a T, that can in itself is overwhelming. So that's what these are meant to help facilitate. And then the other framework book,
Yeah.
but
I was gonna say, it seems like that might be in the.
It would be in the framework book, but if you have a mind dump, then that can help because your mind dump's not necessarily time bound.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, okay, now some of the things we talked about. First thing you do is go into that mind dump and start writing out, and then you look, okay, what's the 91 day and whatnot, whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I'm just wrapping my head.
No, you're good. No, you're good. But hopefully that helps.
No, I think I'm definitely I'm gonna do it. I think I'm just gonna start tomorrow. Just take an hour, plan it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take an extra hour, see what it looks like to stay an hour and plan. So
now, you talked about the differences before about mentor, coaching, and accountability partner. Now that it's on video, we are all your accountability partner. Hey, Brandon,
yep.
Are you taking that hour? Are you progressing? Are you helping the American Wellness?
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess this would be the last of it to wrap it up. Really, thank you for, I guess, taking the time to do this. I mean, it's new. It's different.
No, it is new. It's very useful. In fact, I'm gonna do a lot of things. I'm trying, and I'm glad I came and did it, and I'm glad you offered it to me. Like, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm gonna help, or I'm gonna make it. I want to get the fullest out of it that I can get, and yeah.
That's good. I hope people can hear the fireworks in the background. We're so late. But yeah, anyway, I mean, overall, then I do appreciate it. It's a new thing. It's stuff. As far as a history of going through this, I started this in 2015. So a lot of the pieces and the parts and working on like trying this planner or this system and trying to combine everything all together. It's quite an experience coming and pulling it all together. It's a little bit surreal to see it actually out, a little bit intimidating to actually give it to people and try to sell it and even saying to sell it, like this is like my side quest, I would say, like more of a side passion and side thing versus an actual like this is what I'm going to do with my life. Like I'm in media, I'm creating media and doing productions and production management. I mean, we're going to be talking tomorrow if we'll just see, but essentially it was somewhat of a process to say should this go beyond my own personal management and my own employee management, and to have interest and questions and using it and stress testing it and why is it this way and why can't it be this way, or what would you use this for? I really, really appreciate the feedback on it. So
I think one of the best things is going to be jumping in and doing it for me it's going to be the first time jumping in and trying it out, and then I feel like I'm going to get a good feel and then we're gonna do it again forever. Just
No,
kidding.
no, that's good. And in that last comment, to talk about it, are you locked in forever to do this? And kind of going back to what we talked about in the last video, it's like if you wanted to, you could say, you know what, first 91 days, and then the third 91 days, and then the other ones you're not, as worried about.
Mm-hmm.
But me personally, like, I can't survive without doing it every single time and forever. And so, yeah, if that's the case, then that's the case. But
Yeah.
like if somebody's like, oh man, we're getting sucked into this thing forever, it's like, no, it's yours. It's your
Yeah.
91 day.
And
It's your
that's the thing
benefit.
I like and appreciate is that it's it's your 91 days. What do you want to do with it? What are you gonna do? How do you want to do
Mhm.
it? This is a excellent tool in my opinion on to make it happen, because someone can just get a piece of paper, 91 sheets out, do it, organize it however they want to do it.
Mhm.
To me, this is a perfect tool. In fact, what I've been looking for, and I feel like what a lot of people are looking for.
Mhm.
So I
Okay.
really appreciate that.
Oh, that's good. And I guess we'll see. It'd be cool to kind of do more things like this. I don't know how often, just because the end of this 91 days was kind of getting this launched, and then we're shifting into different focuses of things. We'll for sure bring you on for the framework one.
Yeah,
That might
do it.
be, so we'll release it in 2 weeks, and then in 2 or 3 weeks, and then after that, after it's been essentially formalized, then for sure we'd want to have you kind of go through that, stress
Cool.
test it.
Yeah.
And even I'd be interested, because you're coming from a background that doesn't have, the degrees or education of things. I would be very interested in understanding the use and the application of each thing, because my belief is you'll find that there's a lot of science, or a lot of stuff that works hand in hand with the brain,
Yeah.
and with psychology, and with of how people's minds work, and if you can open some of those gaps of overwhelm, kind of we're talking about, like, am I supposed to fill this out, and kind of you get through almost like getting into a cold pool of water. If we can
Yeah.
just get in there, then we'll start to figure those things out, and then I think you'll find, hopefully we'll see in the next
Yeah.
91 days, to see if it's something that you feel like, you know what, I can't live without having that. Okay, it's go time, it's break time, and during that break time, I gotta understand what the next go time looks like. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, okay. Well, thanks for people watching it and going through it. This is for sure a new experience for me, and I'm sure a new experience for everybody. I guess that thing's been recording, but new experience for everybody. It is a lot different, but I feel like it's been the perfect time, and appreciate anybody who's been on board and purchasing them. We first had about 30 in the first batch, and now we're ordering another 25 or so. So those ones are going to start a little bit later, but that's going to be okay. Like, you could still get through it, you still work through it, and but other than that, like, we're on the right track. I think we're on the right track to help people and to actually use it. So anyway, appreciate it. See you later.